believe. Yes, I believe you died for me on Calvary. So here I am on bended knees.
All right, I want to welcome all of you to this class on the Christian and anger. It's based on this book that I wrote back in 2018. And we are going to do 16 sessions in this course. Those of you who are following me on YouTube and you're watching this video right now, there's 16 lessons. And just follow through. We'll have in the book has all the video and the names for each one on the YouTube video. So I want to welcome you to this. The lecture notes that the students have here in the class that we are recording live are available on our website, teacherthebible.com, and you can go there and download the PowerPoint and the lecture notes from there. All right, we're going to cover a lot of ground today, and so I'm going to give you a very fast overview. First of all, we're going to look at Cain. Right from the get-go, right out of the gate, we see anger in the Bible. And this guy got so angry, he ended up killing somebody. And so the next one we're going to look at is Moses. Moses was the most angry man in the Bible. It says more about Moses being angry than any other person. We're going to see with Moses that anger is generational. We're next going to go to the book of, look at Jonah. Jonah was extremely angry. He was angry enough to die. And he said, I'm willing to die over what he was fighting God over. And what he was angry at was the mercy of God. He wanted judgment on his enemies instead of God's mercy. Samson. Samson was a man, as you guys know, was very strong, but he was also very weak in anger. And his anger got to him, and he killed a lot of people, and he hurt himself. And with Samson, we're going to see how anger is tied to sexual sin. We're also going to see that when we look at Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Then we're going to look at Ahithophel. If Ahithophel was David's counselor, and he took revenge on David, and he ended up dying in a very, very ugly way. So we're going to look at how anger has revenge in it. We're also just going to look at some teaching, straight out teaching, out of the book of Proverbs. Proverbs says more about anger than any other book in the Bible. Jesus' revelation on anger in the Sermon on the Mount is the most profound revelation on anger. If you get that, you really have the answer to the anger issues. And so we're going to cover what Jesus said there in Matthew 5. In fact, the first thing he brought up in terms of relationships with other people was anger. Finally, we're going to look at a very angry man, the Apostle Paul. He was angry before he knew Christ, and he battled anger after he knew Christ. And he wrote a lot about anger. So we're going to go into Galatians, Ephesians, and Colossians and see what he said about anger. All right. So in this first session, we're going to be on chapter 1 of the book, and we're going to cover Cain and anger. The first appearance of anger is in the book of Genesis there. It was in the first family, and it resulted in the first murder. I want to tell you, you guys know this already, it's nothing, everybody knows this, anger's everywhere. We're seeing an explosion of anger. All the killings you're seeing, all the strife, and everywhere you look, with terrorists, suicide bombers, you see it between people groups, the Jews and the Arabs, the Indians and the Pakistans, the Japanese and the Chinese, cultural groups, the racial fight, the racial tensions, all rooted in anger. You see a lot of anger after all the school shootings. Just what we had in Chicago last week with this parade, a guy on top of a roof shooting people at a parade. And the reaction from people is really violent and angry. All the protesting that's going on right now with all kinds of things, you see anger being expressed everywhere. All the domestic violence. The police even have to have new categories. The city of Clovis Police Department has new categories now for dealing with all the violence in the homes, because it's no longer a husband and wife. They're going in there and they're fighting daughter against daughter and sister against sister and mom against brother. It's crazy. So they have to reclassify what they're saying, how they're categorizing these crimes. There's a lot of anger in families, as you know. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and give some statistics to show just how bad anger is in families. And there's a lot of anger everywhere. I want to tell you the story of somebody that was in our church, and they came to me for counseling. She was very, very angry with her husband. The kids were wild and out of control. They had 3 children. And she'd had enough with him, and so she called him, and she was very, very angry. And so we met back here in the Sunday school room, and I did not realize the level of anger that I was going to be dealing with in this counseling session. But they, as counseling people do, they no longer were sitting together. They were sitting apart on the opposite sides of the table. She was on the right, and he was on the left. And boy, she right away just almost stood up. At the end, she was standing up, but she was sitting down initially. And like a well-trained lawyer, she went down. He does this, he's a rat, he's this. And it was like a lawyer just right methodically, just boom, 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 boom. And whenever he tried to say anything, I don't do, and he goes, yes, you do, I'm not done talking, sit down. You know, it was kind of like that. It was like violent. It was like, whoa, these people are going to come to blows here. And so she just kept going and going and going. Whenever he objected, he started raising his hand after a while. Said, can I interject something here? And he goes, no, I'm not done talking. And so she just kept going and going. And then finally, when she stopped for a little bit, he started saying all the bad things that she was doing. Well, what about you? And so he began to list like that. And at the end of it, she said, no. She says, no. You're the problem. And she goes, I'm done with you. I don't have 1 ounce of love for you anymore. She goes, I hate you. This is over. And she pulled off her wedding ring and threw it at him and walked out the door. That was the last of that marriage. I went and picked up that ring. I still have it in my hand right here. This is the ring that lady threw in the back of our Sunday school maybe 10 years ago. She called me within a short amount of time after that meeting, and you know, the husband and I just sat there. It was like, whoa, this was crazy. And so we sat there kind of in stunned silence as I picked up what was left of that marriage, which was nothing. And anger had just ripped apart and torn apart that marriage. They could not get along. Had he done anything? Had he cheated? Had he done? No, he was your average guy. Both were Christians. So anger is in families. She called me, like I said, within an hour or two, and she says, can you meet me at the Target over on Shields and whatever street that is over there? There's a Target, Shields and First, Taco Bell, the parking lot. She told me to go. She said, you will be there. I said, yes, ma'am, I will be there. I got over there, and she had gotten a restraining order on him for her and for me, because she says he'll probably come after you. So I had to sign this paperwork, and she filed a restraining order against her husband. He never did anything, but that's what she thought. So I did it to just move away from her. And I never saw her. I've never seen her again. She was attending our church for a couple years. Anger is in families. The prophet Micah said something that's very true. And Jesus quoted it in the Gospel of Matthew. He said in Micah, the prophet Micah said, Micah 7:6, for son dishonors father, daughter rises against mother, daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are those of his own household. There's a lot of anger. These two people who loved each other, who got married, who had kids together, are now no longer friends, they're enemies. So I want to go quickly here to Genesis chapter 4. If you brought your Bible, let's go there. And let's look here. This man became very, very angry. As you know, Adam and Eve had 2 children. Cain and Abel, and they both brought an offering to the Lord. And in the process of bringing this offering, one of the men get very, very angry. We look at it in verse 5. It says, God did not, notice what he says here. God did not respect or accept Cain, the person, and his offering. God always will reject the person before he rejects the offering. The offering's no good if the person is no good. So that's what we have. We have to have the heart right before we bring the offering. What does it say? Cain was very angry. And there's another thing. His countenance fell. He became very depressed. And here's what you do with angry people. Start asking questions. That calms them down. God asks them questions. Why? And that's what we want to do in this seminar. We want to answer this question. Why are you so angry? And why has your countenance fallen? Why are you depressed? He says, if you do well, won't you be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin's lying at the door. Anger is lying at the door. And its desire is for you, but you have to rule over it. You better master it. He's telling them, you better master this, because if not, it's going to master you. If you don't get a hold of anger and defeat it, it's going to get a hold of you. And so he ended up rising up against his brother and killing him in verse 9. And following, he ends up getting, the God calls him out, where's your brother? And so on. And he ends up becoming a vagabond, a homeless man after that, and a wanderer. Terrible thing that happened. In anger, we also see a lot of depression. The doctors tell us that when we become angry, our adrenal glands begin to secrete hormones that make our face turn red. Our veins will start bulging out of our neck, and our heart starts beating faster. And what happens when you're secreting all those chemicals into your body? You're going on a high. It's like a drug. And what happens after you calm down? You tend to crash. So you go to depression. That's what's happening right here with Cain. So much depression, and if you read books on depression and how to handle depression, they find out a lot of those people are angry people. They vacillate between anger and depression. In fact, those are the poles on bipolar conditions, where people swing from these angry highs to these depressing lows. And so that's bipolar. Basically, if 1 minute a guy can be angry, and the next minute he's crashing down in depression. And what do you do when you're down? You go start sucking on the bottle. You start drinking. You start doing all those things to try to lift you up a little bit. And so much anger so much depression comes from anger. Here's one of the first things that I want you to see about anger is that anger is a choice. You know why people are angry? They choose to be angry. They're determined, I'm going to be angry here, and they don't have any other recourse. That's maybe all the way that they've handled themselves. But notice how God talks to him, and I want to highlight this personal pronoun here. Why are you so angry? The Lord asked Cain, why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right, but if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. God is pointing the finger right at Cain. Abel didn't do anything to him. God wasn't unjust in rejecting his half-mediocre offering that he gave to God. He had the problem. It was him. He was angry. He was the angry person. And so God was pointing the finger directly at him and saying, you're the one. So anger is a choice. And the reason many of us are angry right now is that we choose to be angry. Abel didn't do anything wrong. God was not unjust. Cain could make it right if he wanted to, but he didn't want to. In fact, you see how cynical he is. We'll look at it in the next session. When God asked him, where's your brother? Who? Am I his babysitter? That's the way he was talking to God. You can hear the tone if you read the text. Am I his babysitter? Do I have to watch over poor little Abel? You know, you can hear that cynicism that's in him. And a lot of angry people use cynicism to hide behind all the anger that they're masking. Dr. Cosgrove wrote a really great book. It's from the Christian counseling series called Counseling for Anger, How to Counsel People that are in anger. It's a really, really great book. I really recommend you get it, Counseling for Anger. He said something very interesting. He says, nothing makes people angry. People make themselves angry. If people are angry, it is because at their most fundamental level, they have chosen to be angry. When I lose my temper, it is because I allow myself to explode along the behavior patterns dictated by my previous learning. A lot of people are angry, and we'll see that when we talk about Moses, because this is the way they've always dealt with problems. This is the way they've always done things. This is the way they saw their dad and their mom do it. This is the way they've always dealt with problems in their life. They express a lot of anger. So I want to finish this session, and leading right into the next session, we're going to talk about the evil within that brings out anger in people. Again, people are not making you angry. You're already angry. And we want to find out why in the next session. So we'll stop right here.
You give me strength to run the race with my hands in head lifted high. Oh,